introduced Elektra in the first issue of Daredevil that I wrote. I'd been waiting to bring her in.
People were passionate about this character.
It was just an exploration of what I guess superhero sex would be like.
They came to me with some projects, and Elektra was on the top of the list, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not gonna write Elektra. And they're like, why not? I'm like, no, that's Frank's, I can't do it. And they literally started calling me names.
I remember going to him and saying, are you nuts? I mean, why would you do that?
When we killed Elektra, we had death threats against the creative people on the book.
I loved what Miller had done and was so fundamentally opposed to the idea that they would bring this character back and try to do anything more with her.
She had to be cruelly and coldly murdered by the worst possible enemy Daredevil ever had.
If she died, why did she kill people? Once that question was in my head, that's why I had to take the series to start with.
It was just this period of process. It was really not about the result.
Elektra Lives Again was a ball to do. It's completely insane.
I believe Elektra Assassin was the first painted comic.
This is basically my workspace. Everything I need should be close at hand.
Writing comics is a great gig, whichever way you do it.
Get to the studio at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then literally like within 2 hours, I'd just vomit all this stuff out on the board.
I write comics. If people don't get that, I'll say I do graphic novels. That's what's required to get you to pick it up. I'll call it Fred, if that'll be the thing that gets you to open your eyes. But at the end of the day, it's a comic.
Jim Shooter and Joe Duffy at Marvel Comics agreed to take a chance on me in 1978, I believe it was, and let me become the guy who did the pencil drawings for Daredevil. I was untested. I'd done a few jobs here and there, but they were gambling on me, and I immediately wanted to jump in and turn it into a crime comic. I mean, I was following Gene Colan, who, as far as I can tell, ran screaming off the book after doing so many issues, nobody could count them. And I couldn't compete with his look. I mean, I also couldn't compete with the predominant look of the time, which was John Byrne and Terry Austin's X-Men. And so I just called up Klaus Janson, the inker, and I said, Klaus, we don't know each other, but I need you. You know, will you shepherd my pages through here? Will you take off the rough edges? I knew I was very young and untried. He stayed on, and he added polish to pencils that were at the time obsessive but rough. And you know, a team was born. When I was first hired working in comics, at Marvel Comics, everything had the structure of that Henry Ford could have put together, and there were very good reasons for this. One is it increased production, and comics had become a low-yield, high-production medium. The sales stunk; they were lousy, so they had to keep pumping them out. They still do. And so, if you could pencil a page, you probably had a different set of skills from the guy who could be very quick at rendering in ink. And the guy who could write it, he could pump out 4 books a month with no trouble. When I first lobbied for the job of writing Daredevil after drawing it for a year and a half or so, it was kind of a reaction. It was considered almost unseemly. One Marvel writer said to me, writers write, artists draw. Essentially, who the hell do you think you are? And, I mean, I was raised on Will Eisner. I considered it a falsely divided craft. It's one job. And it just took me a while to get to that one job, you know, to do it myself. I introduced Elektra in the first issue of Daredevil that I wrote. I'd been waiting to bring her in. I thought there was something stupid about the way superheroes always had these normal girls for girlfriends. Why? I mean, why would there be a Lois Lane to Superman? Why wouldn't he be running around with Wonder Woman? I mean, she can match him. Why wouldn't these people be operatic in their romance the way they are in their combat? These people bring down buildings with their passion. That's what they do with their fights. And Daredevil needed a romance that was worthy of him, of his passion and his physicality. And Elektra is such a good Greek myth from the house of Atreus. Agamemnon is her dad and is a vengeful force. And also, come on, Freud named a complex after her, and she's got issues. And I just expanded upon that. And also, I mean, it was just an exploration of what I guess superhero sex would be like. I figured out, I mean, it was kind of like made up on the fly, the whole Daredevil Elektra run that really is the crux of what we're talking about. But when I realized that she really had to die, I went in and they were freaked out, and I said, let me talk to Jim. And I went down the hall, and I said, Jim, I want to kill Elektra. And he went, you know, he looked like he had a headache for a second. And then he said, tell me a story, Frank. And I told him my story, and he said, go home, draw it. It really was that energetic, and there was that much freedom. When he or they thought I was wrong, they said so. But they didn't stop me for other reasons. Not much. Elektra Lives Again was a ball to do. It's completely insane as a creative effort. It's surreal. Probably the most intensely horrific story I've ever worked on. Because it engages the concept of the living haunting the dead, which I thought was a fascinating reversal. But also, it was an effort by me and Lynn to take on the Europeans jaw to jaw. At the time, they were just kicking American butt. Mobius was knocking our socks off. Sergio Topi was coming out of nowhere. It was they were blinding. They were amazing in what they were able to put across. And Lynn and I honestly just sat down and said, we want to show that we can do it. We can compete on a world stage for comics, that we're not just trying to sell more little pamphlets to a small market in the US, that we really want to take them all on. And I think the effort showed. I think that it was a very ambitious book. I love it dearly. It's almost painful to look at it because some of those pages took me so many weeks that I can't tell you. But it was a good book. It was a good run. Writing comics is a great gig, whichever way you do it. I mean, I go through phases where I'd rather draw my own stuff because I'm in a very, very, narrow corridor creatively. I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, I'm absolutely focused on a single goal. But on the other hand, when I get expansive, I love to throw a script at a David Mazzucchelli or Bill Sienkiewicz or Dave Gibbons, and then see what comes bouncing back at me. And it's a completely different process because I do write to the person who's drawing it. I don't feel like I'm some dictator where people have to follow this blinding vision of mine. If the vision's so damn blinding, I can draw it, okay? And even when I draw my own stuff, it's often in color, and that's where Lynn Varley comes in. And then again, I hand her my pages, and I say nothing. I mean, the most sophisticated question we usually have about a scene is when Lynn just says to me, is it day or night? And I'll say it's night, and she'll do it in day, and it'll work. But my collaborations are very loose, very fluid. If I draw it, I'm doing both jobs. But I have to honor the job of drawing when I don't do it by saying that, no, it's in your hands, pal. I feel with Elektra, like I do with Matt, that I'm always like moving my way around these characters, adding at either end. It's a very strange relationship to have to something like that. I mean, I didn't wake up one morning and come up with one Elektra story and then do the next and so on. Elektra is this totality that I find myself. I mean, I made her up, I made up the center, and I've been working outward ever since.